Hello everyone. The game of the week series is back, and with what a game. It also could be actually the game of the day because this was just played. Actually yesterday because I'm recording this video after midnight, but so this game is as fresh as possible. And it was played in the Austrian Bundesliga first league by Leon against Alekseenko Kirill. So what we have to know about the players is that, of course, with the black pieces, Alekseenko was a candidate for the World Championship title. So he played in the 2020-21 Candidates Tournament. A very strong player, over 2700. And with white, actually a very good friend of Angelica was playing, Leon, who was the strongest international master in the world for quite a while with a rating of 2580. But a few days ago he got his title, so already a strong grandmaster now. So let's see what happened in this game. So d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight c3, bishop b4, so Nimzo-Indian and queen b3. So this was always considered to be by many people, and even by me to some degree, like the one of the critical points of the course, obviously. So the queen b3 is a possible move against the Nimzo, but it's definitely, like, theoretically speaking, not the most challenging. But as we will see, it's perfectly playable even at a very, very high level. So this move surprised Alekseenko. He took a few minutes and played the principal move and good move c5. Now d takes c5, knight c6, knight f3, knight e4, bishop d2. So this is also the main line what we analyze with Angelica in the course. Knight takes on d2, knight d2, bishop c5, and the more common way here is to play with e3. So that used to be the old main line, but g3 is our recommendation. The bishop is going to be better in the long diagonal than on e2, for example. So g3, castle, bishop g2. And already up to this moment, Alekseenko used quite a bit of a time. So, even if nothing else, white managed to gain like 15-20 minutes advantage on the clock. And here, in my opinion, black played well, it's hard to call it a dubious move, because of course the possession will remain around equal. So, but it's definitely not a very practical move. He played f5. So my problem with f5 is that black has the time to play it later, and it would be better first to just develop this bishop to b7, where it is going to be placed anyway. So there was no reason to play such a committal move like f5. And actually, one of the things I like about this queen b3 variation is that this f5 move is super tempting. So black has a strong bishop on c5, at least it looks like it's a strong bishop, and then he wants to connect it with the rooks, like sometimes playing f4, but this is just optically, like, very, very tempting. But in general, once we take a deeper look at the position, we will see that this pawn chain, actually, it looks nice, but it's very, very hard to use, so to say. So, like, once again, objectively speaking, it will be equal. So it's not like it's refuting the Nimzo-Indian at all, but it's just, I believe white will be on the easier side of the equality, because it's really, really hard to to play well with those pawns. So if f pawn goes, then knight goes to e4. If e pawn, then d5 square, and if d6, then the e6 pawn can be weak. So it looks nice, but it's very hard to go further with these pawns, so to say. Anyways, the main reason why I consider it a little bit inaccurate that the bishop goes anyway to b7, and then black can see what to do. So Leon castle b6, and here a3 was played, which is a natural move and happens in a lot of cases in this variation. But I believe he could have used this imprecise move order from black to his advantage. So I can show you that our main line one of the main lines in the course goes like b6, castles, bishop b7, rook a to c1, because we have to make a flexible move here. So nobody guarantees that black is playing f5 here, or let's say bishop e7, rook c8, and just putting his pieces to normal squares and keeps the pawn on f7. So we have to be ready for both f5 and if not f5. So that's therefore rook c1. It's good for both setups, and okay, now black can play f5, and at least he managed to get our rook to c1, which is not the best square for the rook in this particular position. So let's see, f5 castle b6. So my improvement over this game would be to play rook a d1 right away. So extremely logical move. So the rook is already eyeing this d7, which is the base of black's pawn chain, and once the bishop goes to b7, it can be a target. So now black plays bishop b7, and we play queen c2. And we have this idea to play a3 b4, and if we kick that bishop from the g1 a7 diagonal, then this f5 is, which is obviously connected with some attacking ideas, is not doing much. So what can happen here? I mean, I looked at some moves, but let's, for example, knight d4. So if black is trading the bishops, we already have this idea to play b4 and decoy the bishop and take the knight on d4, queen f6, a3, a5, and let's say knight f3. So we are trading this strong knight. We can take here with the queen, but I believe ef is even stronger. So basically we put huge pressure on this pawn, and if this pawn moves, then thanks to ef, we can also put pressure on e6. Bishop is really out of play. It's a very nice and pleasant advantage for white. Similarly, knight b4. Now we can play queen a4, which is also typical that when the knight is coming to b4, we play queen a4. So now we can find this focal point for our heavy pieces on d7, and position is pretty unpleasant once again. Knight b3 is coming. This exchange is not doing much for black, and if f4, which looks principled, it's just very bad actually, because the knight is coming to e4. It's a super strong square, and this bishop can be taken any moment, and we just have a nice square there. Maybe doubling on the d file is coming soon. And if something which happened in the game is played here, like queen c8, then we can just play knight f3. You will understand this move once we are seeing the game. So knight f3 controlling e5, d4, and we are just ready to double on the d file, like rook d2, rook fd1, and I believe white has at least a slight advantage. We also have ideas like playing knight b5, and if black plays a6, then ideas to play knight a4 and attack those squares. So in this position, I analyzed a little bit further. So if black plays e5, then we can again change a little bit our strategy. Go knight d2. So e4 is black's idea, and then to push e3, but after knight d2, e4, knight b3, suddenly the knight is on the other side and forcing that bishop away, or taking eventually, and positionally with many weak squares on the d file, white is better here. So I believe basically you can already feel that what I like about this position for white, that once again it is equal. So it's hard to argue that it's not equal. But black has many moves, and I see it as a great opportunity for black to go wrong actually. So everything looks fine, but not everything is fine. Okay, so Leon played a3, I believe also a little bit inaccurate, bishop b7. And the next move, I believe, is probably the only slight mistake in this game. So he played e3, which is very logical in a way to, once again, to little bit restrict this bishop on c5, but it was simply not needed, I would say. So once again, queen c2 could have been played, or queen d1, or rook c1, because f4 still was not a real threat from black. So why was it a problem? Because now black played queen c8, very strong move, and after rook a to c1, he played knight e5. So that's why in the variation I showed, when we played knight f3, it was pretty important to stop this idea. So in these alternative lines, when the knight is going to d4 and b4, it will be kicked eventually, and it's not placed well. On e5, however, I mean, e5 also not like a super strong square, only if the pawn is on e3, because now then there are two targets for this knight. So that's a little bit of an issue, but of course white is very solid, so it's nothing dramatic, just I believe black is comfortable now. So bishop takes b7, queen b7, and I really like what happens here. So basically, what is our problem here with white is that this knight on e5 is super strong. So in the next moves, we will offer a trade to this knight. So knight e2 is played, rook c8, knight f4, bishop went back to e7, and now knight e3. So it was very nicely played. So we are offering the trade. Of course, if black is trading, then we are completely fine. Again, the d7 pawn can be a target. So he went back to f7, and now queen d1. So the queen is not doing much on b3. So queen d1, black played rook c7, and a4. It's a little bit defensive idea against b5. So in the future, black cannot play b5 that easily, and we can put our pawns on light squares. So also the e7 bishop cannot really target our queen side. Of course, I would like again to emphasize that white is not better here, but I believe the game is going on, and it will be harder for black at some moment. So rook fc8, b3, and a6 was played. It's a very useful natural move, so sometimes b5 will be in the position as an opportunity. If black would have played g5 right away, which is also a typical idea with ideas like g4 and knight g5, can look pretty dangerous, then actually white has two good choices. The computer prefers a little bit exotic g4. To be honest, I'm not sure it will be my first choice, but the point is to again break this chain. Of course, if pawn takes, then queen takes, and if we can take gf, ef, then the d5 square will be available. So anyway, instead of this, I like queen h5, and if black goes g4, then just before the knight could come with great power to g5, I can undermine with h3 this strong pawn chain, and knight g5, hg4, and white is just better. So a6 was played, queen f3, offering the trade of the queens, and black played rook c6. I would say pretty ambitious move. If queen f3, knight f3, it is still equal, but I like our part of the equality once again. So I can see how I will probably improve this position a little bit, and with black, it's tough. He can overextend himself somehow, maybe play b5 too early or some bad trades. Again, of course, if black is playing for a draw and just tries to stay solid here, probably it will be a draw, but long game is bad. So rook c6, rook fd1, rook c7, and now white played queen g2. I believe this game was really played in the spirit of this variation, so just understanding that that basically we can provoke black even a little bit. Also, probably it's this strategy works better when opponent is higher rated and ambitious, probably. But in any case, so like with queen g2, we don't spoil anything. We have time, so it really fits to this variation, and we have no weaknesses really. But computer also already is saying that e4 was possible and probably already slightly preferable, even objectively speaking. So if computer already saying that it is preferable for white, it's really a huge thing because it happens not that often. So queen g2, and Alekseenko here played e5. Again, extremely ambitious. He has ideas to play like e4 and then to plan this knight on f3. Also, he opens the 6th rank for the rook, so he's definitely planning some attack here. And Leon played a very, very strong move here, so if you would like, you can stop the video now for and to guess a move and then continue. So he played knight b1, immediately taking advantage of this weak square on d5, so he is going towards c3 and d5. So black played e4, knight went to f4, and bishop f8. So of course there are some issues here for black that this knight d5 is kind of a foil because the bishop is not protected. So black removed this bishop to f8 and then knight c3. Very logical and good move, and it's really a good move. It's just a different strategy than what was also interesting and maybe objectively better, but again, it's hard to say because both are good. So there was already this very nice and little bit unexpected choice from white in this position with g4. So undermining these pawns, and black has no good way. I mean, of course, g6 just fails to gf5 because of the pin, so that's not possible. And otherwise, black cannot just protect the pawns. And in case of f takes g4, now we don't take on e4 or g4. Actually, probably, I mean, taking on g4 would be definitely a mistake because the knight is coming with a tempo to e5 and f3. But now the knight can come to c3, and then knight g5, queen g4, and the knight comes to f3. But at the end of the day, once we look at these pieces on the queen side and the bishop on f8, probably the knight alone on f3. It's a very nice piece, I have to say, but that's all. So it's also not doing that much, and alone it will not checkmate or anything like that. So white is just much better in this position. And if knight goes immediately, then again we just take knight f3, king h1, and similarly to the previous position, knight c3 will come, attacking on e4, probably putting a knight on d5, and even if at some moment the rook is coming to h6, white just plays h3 and kind of that's it. So it's completely safe. So g4 was already a strong idea. Knight c3 was played, knight e5. So now there is no g4, but white's idea was different. He wanted to play h4. So in this way, he's stabilizing the knight on f4 and stopping g5. But basically, the overall point of white is the same, that one knight on f3 will not do a summer, as they say. So the knight nevertheless went to f3, king h1, and it's simply extremely tough to do anything with black. He tried g5. Rook h6 also looks like very scary in a way that g5 is coming, but no, I mean black simply doesn't have enough material and resources to create danger. So now the strong move is queen h3, attacking on f5, to g5, knight fd5. So now everything is hanging for black. f5 is hanging, c7 is hanging, gh4 is kind of the point, but then white has the very cool and calm g4, closing the h file actually, but the king side not completely, because at some moment it can be white who is going to use the g file and attack black's really weak king. So Alekseenko tried g5, but now knight d5 came with the tempo on the rook. So rook c8, and again now very strong move, queen h3. Just a super strong move, eyeing this pawn on f5, and black doesn't really have again two options he has, but both are pretty sad. What happened in the game g4 is just leads to a strategically very bad position, so closing the king side while the game is basically lost on the d file, and on the queen side is obviously a hard decision to make, but gh4 probably was even worse. And once again, of course, we are not taking that to give black play, but we just push g4. This idea we already have seen, and black doesn't really have anything here. So g4 was played, queen f1, and okay, basically strategically black is lost. So once again the knight is nice on f3, but everything else is extremely bad. So rook h6, knight e2, b5, and this is actually the second very nice knight maneuver in the game. So once again black has only one good piece, white is trading that piece, or at least if black doesn't want to trade, he has to go back or something, but now it was not possible because of the pawn on f5. So knight takes d4, rook takes on d4, rook h to c6, and now really black doesn't have anything else, just weaknesses and some bad pieces. Queen d1, d6, knight f4, queen f7, and here probably in time trouble both players did some small mistakes. So white played queen e2. Actually the nice way to win was just to play king g2. And the idea of the move is that it will prevent all sorts of queen exchanges, and it will keep enough heavy pieces on the board to checkmate black's king. So let's say it looks like that the c pawn is hanging. It's very important that we trade a pair of rooks, but the second one we are not trading, so it would just bring black closer to the draw, but we don't want that. So bc4, rook c4, and now rook b1, rook a1, anything is good, and we are down a pawn in a completely winning position. According to the computer, it's +4. Practically speaking, it's maybe even worse for black. This king is super weak. Knight is wonderful, and rook is coming to the 8th rank. There is really not much black can do here. So instead queen e2 was played, bishop g7, and rook d2. And here Alekseenko had the last chance to, not to save the game, but to have a really bad endgame, which is maybe possible to save. And it could have been like bc, bc4, rook c4. And the difference compared to the previous lines is that the rook is now not on the first rank. So if it would be on d1, then the queen could still go somewhere, and we can still play against black's king. But now if it goes to the first rank, then black can insist on trading with queen c1. That's why also king g2 was a useful move, and I showed in a previous position, but okay, this is the position as I refer to, that okay, black's chances improve, but still a horribly difficult position to hold. So Alekseenko played bishop e5, but after this he did not have any chances to save the game. So knight d5, king g7, king g2, king h6, c2, b takes on c4, bc4, rook b8. And now once again a strong idea. It's already the third time that a very strong exchange is coming from white. So queen d1, rook goes to c5 and rook b1. So trading that active rook, and black will remain with that awkward c5 rook. So rook b7 takes, and now rook c1. So getting ready to activate the rook, and once again here c4 pawn already doesn't really matter much. Rook went to a5, rook b1, queen c8, rook b5, rook a3, and knight to e7. So it was already time to invade into black's possession, and black cannot really protect his king. Queen e6, rook b7, rook a2, and the decisive move is queen d5. Very nice one, basically getting rid of the real defender of black's king, and using some tactical idea is deciding the game. So black took, and now knight takes f5, intermediate move. So the point is that if the king goes to g6, then knight gives a check, and here we can choose c d5, knight d5, both are winning, and then collect e4, g4 in the future. So it's just a winning endgame. So black went king h5, c takes d5, rook d2, and a very nice final idea from white. Rook e7, rook takes on d5, and rook e6. Quite picturesque position. So the king is kind of stalemated, but mate is coming from h6. Black cannot do anything, no stalemate tricks, nothing, too many pieces for him. And it's also kind of nice in a way that after 57 moves the material is still equal, but black has to resign, and still you can see these d6, e4 pawns are still weak. So what f5 created at the beginning was still there at the end. So I believe a very nice game to illustrate how this queen b3 line can go. So I believe it has more poison than most people would think, at least in practical play. So I believe once again Alekseenko pretty quickly went wrong with this f5. So it's still equal, but after this rook a d1, he has some issues to solve, and white can switch on to a little bit more proactive play also at this moment. Alright, so I hope you like this game. I really liked it. I believe it's very, very instructive, and it's very good that with this queen b3 Nimzo we can even win against 2700, at least get a very decent game and playable game against 2700. So, and by the way, Leon also has a chessable course, so if you probably I will put it to the description. So if you want to learn something against the King's Indian with the white pieces, then I can really recommend his course. It's a very strong, very, very strong course. So yeah, so if you like the video, you can subscribe, share. I hope the microphone, I tried a different one. I hope this one is better than the previous, so you can give feedback about it or write some comments. And hope to see you soon with some new video.